Saturday, August 17th, 2019. And this is the Pro and the Con Show, and I'm your host, Michael James Ott. Welcome to the show once again. 10 to 15 minutes, encouraging all of us to be better citizens, to at least being open to listening to opposing views. I usually try to point out, go through some 5 different websites, some of them kind of left-leaning, some of them right-leaning, and show the differences in the information that they're presenting or how that information is being presented to try to, make sure people understand the bias that's, coming at them. Today I want to do a Trump talk. So pros and cons. So this is called the Pro and Con Show. It's all about, the truth, the pro and the con, the good and the bad, the for and against. And Mr. Trump, what are the pros and cons of Mr. Trump as President of the United States? So I went through a little list here and prepared just a list of some pros here for Mr. Trump. And also some cons. So I wanted just to go through these things and talk a little bit about them from the perspective of people that look at Mr. Trump's performance. So the pros. So speaks his mind. So you can count on Mr. Trump to whatever's in his brain comes out his mouth. He mostly does that, and I think there's a lot of his supporters, a lot of people in this country that support him that like that aspect of him. He's unlike most politicians. He doesn't have much of a filter. He's entertaining. So, excuse me. One of the reasons why he was actually elected is because he was somewhat famous. He worked at this his entire life. He worked hard in New York, trying to any films that were being filmed in New York, which is a fairly common practice, especially back in the 70s and 80s and so on. He would try to get cameos in them, try to hobnob with various people to, get into the entertainment field, because ultimately Mr. Trump is all about trying to increase the Trump brand. And you can argue yes or no whether that's a good thing, but certainly it's a good thing for Mr. Trump and the Trump family. So he's entertaining, and to this day he makes these speeches, and people go to see him because he's entertaining. He says stuff that elicits response. Okay, he's not a dull person. Right. Another pro is that he's supportive of legacy industry. So he's got a lot of fairly wealthy friends. They're mostly caught up in legacy industries, petroleum, and so on. And because of that, he generally supports legacy industry. There's also, some number of people that he talks to. They also support legacy industry, and so in order to get them to support him, he tells them that he supports legacy industry like coal and fossil fuels, other oil and so on. He's provocative. So one of the things that a lot of people don't like about a lot of politicians is that they feel like they're a muted voice, that they are too politically correct. And certainly Mr. Trump is not afraid of provoking, anybody, really. Another pro that people consider a positive of him is that he delivered on court appointments and on some tax breaks. Another pro is that he is not a traditional racist. So there's a lot of discussion about racism and his rhetoric, but he is definitely not a traditional racist. And he's influential. So because of really all the things above, there's a significant portion of the population of this country and people around the world that allow Mr. Trump to have influence over them. And in fact, it's his kind of magic recipe that he does these kinds of things, and why he is such an effective and prolific confidence man, is because this the confidence with which he does all of these things, instills this feeling by people that he can be trusted, and is so-called speaking the truth. So those are the pros of Mr. Trump. The cons. So he speaks his mind. That was one of the pros. Well, it's also one of the cons, because what's on his mind almost always is what is most beneficial for Mr. Trump. The wheels are always turning up there, and they're always turning to what is most beneficial for Mr. Trump. There is one truth in this world, and that is, well, there are many truths in this world, but one of the many truths in this world is that Mr. Trump exists for Mr. Trump. That's it. And if you think otherwise, you are sorely mistaken. So he speaks his mind, but it's very often not the truth. The wheels are turning, and he's trying to figure out, what do I need to say to whoever it is that I'm talking to at this moment in time to get them to do what I want them to do. And that's all he cares about. He's entertaining. Now, I have to say that one of the things that's true, I mean, if you've ever watched C-SPAN, and many of us have maybe turned it on for a few moments, one of the things that's generally true about good government is it's not entertaining. It's not. It's boring. There's certainly elements of government, the things that whenever government becomes exciting or entertaining, provoking kind of stuff. This is the stuff of military coups and inappropriate infighting and stuff like that. It has nothing to do with good government. Good government is all about providing a structure, a consistent structure going forward for stability. Okay, so fair, equal, fair, just, stable. These things are what government is supposed to be doing. And quite frankly, I mean, that's not entertaining. It's not. But good government is those things. So the fact that he is entertaining is actually a con from the standpoint of good governance. Supportive of legacy industry. There's nothing wrong with being supportive of legacy industry, but you have to integrate that the past is the past and the future is the future. And we have to move forward. We can continue to use fossil fuels, but somehow, some way, we've got to, by example, we can continue to use fossil fuels, but by some way, somehow, we've got to fix the impact that those applications are having on the environment. And there are methods to do that. We don't have to necessarily switch away from the use of gasoline, for example. There are new technologies that are becoming available where we can basically take carbon dioxide, and the ability to extract carbon dioxide fairly efficiently from the atmosphere has been available for a long time. I was on submarines, and we had these small machines that did this on board the submarine because we recycled the air in the submarine, and we had to extract the carbon dioxide. So extracting it is not the problem, but turning it into something that is useful is the problem. But now it looks like we can use fairly energy efficient catalyzed processes to turn it into synthetic oil or synthetic fuel. Okay, and then so basically start recycling carbon dioxide in the air. And if we start doing that on a large basis, which we easily could, we just have to spend the money and get the jobs and stuff out there. Well, then, we can have it both ways. But the negative of supporting legacy industry is that sometimes those legacy industries are having an impact that we don't want going forward, okay, or want to mitigate or reduce going forward. Another con is he's provocative. So, again, it was a pro, but it's also a con because he kind of randomly pokes people, and some of the things that are going on around the world, it's really just because Donald Trump, would be king and decides on his own. And so, unfortunately, because of the powers of the President of the United States, he can determine whether we're going to, he can unilaterally just say, no, we're not going to participate in this treaty anymore, or we're going to up the military presence and the combativeness with, North Korea or Iran or whatever, and he can just do that. And provoking that kind of stuff and all of the associated activities and risk around the world, that can often be a very negative thing. He delivered on the court and the taxes, yeah. So now there's more conservative judges on the Supreme Court, and there's a tax break. But unfortunately, the tax break didn't go. It was very carefully written so that the poorer people and the lower income people did not get very much of a tax break, and it mostly went to people like Mr. Trump, who have a lot of money, and they left or provide a lot of tax breaks to the rich. And this is, it's, people wanted a tax cut, but they didn't want it to go to the rich. Okay. And then, he's not a traditional racist. He's a non-traditional racist. And what do I mean by that? Well, I said earlier that there's one thing that Mr. Trump cares about. One and only one thing, and that's Mr. Trump. Okay? So anybody, all 7.8 billion of us on the planet, that isn't Mr. Trump and isn't doing what Mr. Trump wants for Mr. Trump is automatically someone that he really despises. Because there's one guy, there's other people like this on the planet, but he's certainly one of them. He thinks that what he thinks is what the way things should be. He thinks he should be God. And, so he's a non-traditional racist in that he hates anyone who says anything that isn't exactly in alignment with what he's thinking and wanting. So, is that racist? Well, he hates everybody except himself. So it's non-traditional. Usually racists will target, certain people of a certain ethnic background or religion or whatever, or maybe a group of, or, several ethnic backgrounds or religions. But they'll, more than tolerate their own families and friends and whatnot, the people that are similar to them. Not the case in Mr. Trump. And then finally, he's influential, and that's a pro, and that's a con. For the very similar reasons of him being provocative, he's influential. And so there's, when he's out there and he's like, lock him up, and I'm going to beat the crap out of this guy, and, all of this violent kind of rhetoric that he, throws out there, unfortunately, there's a fraction of us, of humanity, where we react to that in a bad way. And we do things because we think that the President of the United States is leading us to do those things. Now, it's not all of us. By far, the vast majority of us are not affected or affected very much. But 340 million people, all you need is a few dozen, and that I'm sure there's more than a few dozen that are actually very much affected and influenced by some of the things that he says on a regular basis. All right, so the pros and cons of Mr. Donald Trump. For your edification, I'm Michael James Ott. This has been the Pro and the Con Show. Another one, 10, 15 minutes. Until the next one, bye for now.